Krista, what prompted you to run for this position?
I attended a school board meeting last fall with some of the same concerns that have been spoken about here today. But I think what was alarming to me was the way in which there were several that went about dealing with the issues that they had and the confrontation. I was very grateful that there wasn't any children present at that particular board meeting. And it made me stop and think about the fact that I think that as a community as a whole, and sometimes if you haven't served on a board, you might not understand the dynamics of a board. And a school board is an especially unique in that they don't hold the power that you might think that they do. And it takes somebody that is able to look at things and step back and look for what not only the best for your children, but what's the best for the children of this entire district. And we have underserved children. We have children that don't have parental influence in their home, and the parents that aren't speaking on their behalf. And it's going to take a voice that's going to speak for them as well. And that's why I'm running, to be a voice for not just my own children, who I've had 4 that have gone through Gering Public Schools, but for all the children of Gering Public Schools.
Thank you. Krista, what is your philosophy when it comes to parental involvement in the development of curricula and other issues affecting their child's education?
Absolutely. Involvement is necessary. And so I'll share, I'm a volunteer for CASA, and I have these darling little boys that I'm presently their CASA advocate, and I'm who's going to the parent-teacher conferences. I'm the one that's going in and emailing with their teachers right now, and I'm not their parent, but I'm the adult that is involved and is making those efforts on their behalf. And to see the difference that is making in their lives, and the difference that their teacher is, how their teacher is reacting and dealing with them, knowing that there is an adult that is aware of them and is behind them, is making a huge impact. And I think that happens as parents when we're involved. Not when we're overtaking, but when we are present. When teachers and educators and staff and administration know that as parents that we're aware and that we're involved in what is happening in our children's education and in their lives, it has an impact. And so I absolutely believe in parent involvement.
Krista, what other career pathways would you like to see developed?
Well, this is an interesting question, considering I sat at a table last night at a high school basketball banquet and talked with some juniors and sophomores and juniors for next year about what they would like to see. And I know that we have a health science program that's in it, but it's in its beginning stages. For those pre-nursing students, they would like to see that they graduate with an LPN, not LPN, but with their CNN. Is it CNA? Yes, thank you. That they graduate from high school with their CNA license so that they are able to work and make money while they're pursuing their nursing degree. My daughter in particular, she was in the middle of when a particular teacher at Gering High School left. She was in the middle of learning some ethical hacking and those things, which are no longer available at Gering High School, and so would like to see that also continue. Obviously, a big proponent of the vocation, as well as come from a family. I have electricians and plumbers, but I think that I'm a big proponent on building on what we already have and what we have began.
Gering Public Schools has partnered with Scottsbluff Schools in a number of areas, some extracurricular activities, like notably the swim team. How much farther should collaboration go, And would you ever consider an instance to consolidate the districts?
Well, I think that collaboration for the CCATs has obviously been a great collaboration. I think that there's great pride between both schools for the CCATs. As far as of the two school districts becoming one, we moved here 16 years ago from Omaha, where Omaha Public Schools has one school district with lots of high schools. I grew up in Boise, Idaho. Boise Public Schools has lots of high schools. So to me, moving here and being so close together, and there was these two separate districts, was a little bit odd. But I have to tell you that the school pride has grown on me. I live in a community that loves their school, they love their community, they are go blue, go gold, and I think that Scottsbluff feels that same way. I think it would be really hard for the two districts to become one. That said, as much as we like to say that the education has nothing to do with money, it has a lot to do with money. I look at the property tax that is right now going through the legislature and what that possibly can do, because right now that is where a huge amount of our funding comes for our schools, and as we lower that property tax, how are we going to fund our districts? So more of our money will have to come from the state.
Thank you.
So right now, no. Future, maybe.
The district has had to secure a line of credit with a local financial institution to protect district cash flows. What do you believe the district needs to do to stabilize funding, especially when state aid fluctuates year to year?
Well, I think unfortunately this last year or two, I think there's been some unexpected things that came up in the district that required that. But I also, I was looking at some data, and we're like ranked 49th in the country as far as our districts getting money from the state. Nebraska really, our local school districts really stay within their districts as far as funding. And so the money from the state doesn't just fluctuate. A lot of it's not coming. And so I think that maybe having that, maybe a larger cushion to fall back on when those things arise that are unexpected happen. But I also believe that a school district is not a normal business. When you're looking at how you run a business, a school district is different. And though I've never been a part of the business committee for the school district, I do have lots of family members that are educators, and from what that I have learned and gleaned from them and from what I understand from them, it's not a typical business. So I can't really speak to exactly not knowing how it runs.
Thank you. Krista, what do you believe the board's stance should be when it comes to the proper age to begin sex education, and when should controversial subjects of gender identity and fluidity be introduced?
I was really concerned when because I think that we have a tendency now to get, we see hot topics, right? They come across our social media, and so I was very concerned. And so I actually pulled the health directives that the state has given out, and I was really relieved to find out that they are absolutely, the state has given all the power back to local boards, and it says not only local boards but parents. And so I think that those decisions, I'm grateful that it won't be just the board's decision to make, that the age and appropriateness will be not just our board's decision, but parents as well. I also have concern. The board brought, years ago when my son was in high school, this was several years ago, and my daughter and son were in high school, brought a guest speaker that was going to speak to the high school. And the night before, she was a sex education teacher, and the night before, the parents were allowed to come and listen to what their children were going to hear the next day. and there was 20 parents in the auditorium the night before, which speaks to the fact that, yes, parents want an opinion, but again, not all of our students are having the opportunity to have their parents teaching them these things. Yes, we want it to be taught in the home first, but that's not always the case.
Krista, do you think the grading scale should be that rigorous, or should it conform more closely to post-secondary grade scales?
I'm a little bit torn on this. It changed to the 90, 94, whatever it is, when my kids first started here in Gearing. And so my kids have all gone through with this grading scale. And I would actually, you would think that they would not want it. But my daughter, Savannah, who is a junior at Gearing High School right now, she said it makes her a better student. She works harder. And as I'm saying this, I'm watching our timers shake their heads and say, yes, yes, that it makes them a better student. They work harder. They manage their time better, knowing that the grade in which they have to receive in order to keep their A is what it is. So though that when they get to college, they only have to have a 90 to 100 in order to keep that A, they are used to working at a level in which a 94 to 100 is what an A is to them. So me, as a parent, I'm like, 90 to 100, great, that's an A. But as a parent of 4 high schoolers that have gone through, I can absolutely say on their behalf that they love the system.
So we're down to our last question. I thought we would do long division for this one, if you get, no, I'm just kidding.
Bill.
Start with you, Krista. No, I'm just kidding.
Math was not my...
This is our last question, and I'll make this one not as much about the issues, but maybe a little bit of a fun one to end on for you before we get to your closing statements. So, Krista, you're elected, and we fast forward 4 years from now. How would you define success?
Okay, so I've heard a lot tonight about the other side of the river. I think that I would find success if we, as right here in Gearing, Nebraska, that we didn't care what was happening on the other side of the river, that we were proud, that we weren't comparing ourselves, that all we cared about is building on what we have here. We have amazing teachers. We have an amazing administration. We have a superintendent that all unanimously was chosen. And building on that and building on what we have so much that we can be building on. And not worrying about what is happening anywhere else. It's probably one of my biggest pet peeves, having moved here and not being a born and raised Bulldog, is that there's this constant comparison between the two. And I think that we just need to come to a place that we are Gearing Bulldogs, that we are Gearing School District, and we are happy for whatever is happening with them. We are happy to be sea cats with them, but we are blue and gold, and that's all that matters. And so at the end of 4 years from now, if we can say, if I'm elected, that there's this vision that we're Gearing, then I think that that will be successful.
Thank you. Okay, we will give each of you 1 minute for closing statements.
16 years ago, when we moved here, we, like the Mazers, we went door to door and house to house, and fellow employees that my husband was working with, asking where do we want our children to go to school. And it was a renowned and you want to be in Gearing Public Schools. And so this is where we have built our home. We have made the decision as our children, we have one left in the nest, and we are now building our home that we will retire here and stay here forever. And so it's not just for my own children that I want to see Gearing Public Schools thrive, but for our community that I'm a part of. I've continued to go and read in the elementary schools that my kids are no longer there. I served on booster clubs. My job now is the volunteer coordinator at the Midwest Theater, so I am an advocate for volunteerism. I've served on several boards. I understand what it's like to be a silent voice, and then also know when to speak. And so I would really love the opportunity to be a voice for Gearing Public Schools.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all of our candidates running for Gearing Public Schools Board of Education for participating in tonight's forum. Greg, Brian, John, Krista, Rick, Mike, Gloria, Brandon, Colleen, thank you all for being here. We hope you at home, this helps you in deciding who you wish to vote for. As a reminder, in the May 10th primary election, you'll be allowed to vote for 3 candidates. The top 6 vote getters in the primary election will advance to the November general election. This candidates forum is one of several being presented by the Government Affairs Committee of the Scottsbluff-Gearing United Chamber of Commerce. We again would like to thank the Rural Radio Scottsbluff staff for recording this forum so you can view it, the timers, students from Gearing Public Schools for volunteering, the Chamber staff, and the Gearing Civic Center for hosting us this evening. On behalf of the Scottsbluff-Gearing United Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee, and for my co-chair Don Wolf, I'm Bill Boyer. Thank you for joining us, and remember, get out and vote.